There's leftover barbecue chicken in the fridge.
Woohoo.
Hello.
Let me try to get my screen up. Are you seeing Canvas? Canva?
Damn.
Yes.
Okay, so I have not gone through every question, but I'll show you kind of what I have so far. And I'm making it right now in the form of a presentation that I figured could just be converted to a PDF, sort of like a booklet thing that people could then look through.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Tell me how long your presentation is supposed to be.
It's 20 minutes with 10 minutes of questions. And
Okay.
I think I'll need to do a separate presentation from this because I won't have time to go through the entire census. And I think my presentation on the 15th needs to be a little bit more broad than that and more so like talking about my entire experience with OCFSN. So yeah, I think I'll have to make a separate presentation for that and then make it even more general in terms of like the major trends that I've observed. But yeah, 20 minutes of actual presenting, 10 minutes of questions. And so that's another reason why I think it might be more useful to include like the broader Veggie Rx working group and maybe a separate meeting if people are willing, just so we do have more time to go into each question as much in depth as people would like. So this one that I'm sharing right now, this is the more in-depth census report that'll be shared with the broader Veggie Rx group. Okay. But it'll have a lot of similarities with the June 15th presentation, which I should probably start focusing on because that's so soon. Okay, so general organization for this, I'm going to have like a table of contents. This is all just from the template. I haven't actually filled any of this in. Brief like methodology of how the survey was formed or created and how many people it was shared with, how long they had it, so on and so forth. I figured it'd be a good idea to just define Veggie Rx just because there are some programs that, you know, we didn't include, but will be maybe on the map. So just kind of explaining where that cutoff occurs. And then geographical spread, this is where the map will be, which I'm trying to, I'm thinking the best way to map the different programs out is to do it by the various sites where folks can receive the actual prescription.
Have you made the maps already?
No, I'm still trying to
I have
get
a tool for you.
Sorry?
I have a tool for you if you were looking for one.
Okay.
It's Google. It's called My Maps, and you can add layers to it. So if you make one, I would love to have that after you've made it, because I started making one for OCFSN. Here, let me show you. Like, I will show you what I have so far. I like didn't know it was a thing.
Google has so many features.
Yeah, it's amazing. Let me see, let me know if that link works or if I just accidentally gave you my internal one. Can you open that?
Yeah.
Cool. So you can do like different tabs. And so if you use your like OCFSN email, you should be able to create your own like My Maps and then just do different layers. So this way you could do like the HQ for Veggie Rx programs potentially, and like pickup sites, or like, however you want to like arrange it.
When it looks like, Shin, you even have on here like a few that are labeled Veggie Rx.
Yeah, I had started it and I was like, I I should not be the one making this because I don't actually know.
Oh yeah, yeah.
This is super cool. This is basically like
Yeah.
ArcGIS, just like a simplified version of it.
Yeah, and then like each one of these, like once you open the tab, you can you can add photos, you can add like other things to it. So I think this is like, and I think it's a free tool. So there's like no reason for us to have to like fuck with our ArcGIS.
That's awesome.
So that was a fun random discovery from like, I don't know, some blog article I randomly read. So yay.
So cool. Yeah, I can definitely do it in that. I'm thinking that the most time consuming part for that is just figuring out what the different sites are. And I'm realizing I definitely should have had a question in the survey that explicitly asks, like, please provide the name and address of like pickup sites and prescription sites. Cause I was just kind of doing like site in general, but I mean, yeah, some programs have just one pickup site, which is the same as the prescribing site. Whereas other places it's like, there's 4 prescribing sites and there's like 10 pickup sites.
And so I would say something like that, where like, if you are not able to get that information, if you can keep track of these are the additional questions that we should be asking for future census, that's something that we could then build in for the next intern to work on too. And I think like all you're doing is creating like an additional like great foundation for someone to build off of.
That's a great idea. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Presentation too.
I was gonna say that, yeah, if you're only able to get like where the offices are located of each program, but then that, especially with this Google mapping thing, somebody could come back through and, add it, or the sites themselves, after we review this with you, like maybe the sites are like, oh, let me give you, not you necessarily, but give OCFSN all of the addresses and just add that in.
Yeah. Like even if I feel like they usually tell you what county they work in. So even if you just do like a county map and color that in, that could probably be good enough for now.
Yeah, I have that information right now. I'm doing for my term project for my GIS class, we have to do a project of like figuring out the best location of something. So I was like, might as well do it Veggie Rx related.
Yeah, cool.
So I was going to do like, if there were to be a new Veggie Rx program, what is the best place in Oregon? I think it'll be like, which town is the best place in Oregon?
Okay.
Do that. So yeah, I need to find, I don't know where I'm going with that, but yeah, I'm going to be working on that anyways. So I think I have most of the prescribing sites, at least. I'm just going to go back and maybe email a couple of people to confirm that I did get that right. But yeah, I'll keep you updated on how that goes.
Cool.
Okay, so, and then I have a general, I don't actually know what I was going to put in there. I think, I'm just going to get rid of that. And then I kind of am going to go into like the different sections of the survey. So that's broken up by operations, eligibility, I think redemption, funding, and then like generally like moving forward and how things are going. So I've started to break those down question by question, and excuse how awful the slides look right now. I'm just trying to get the graphs in there.
I like the color scheme you use.
Yeah, that's kind of pretty colors. So a lot of them are pie charts, but I don't know if this is the best way to display things, because it, like for this, it works, but other questions, for instance, like screening / eligibility criteria. There were only 11 programs that responded, but like there's multiple criteria per program. So I don't know if this way of displaying the data is misleading and making it seem like 9 programs only use food security, 1 program only uses income threshold, 7 programs only use diet-related illness diagnosis. So I don't know.
I wonder, could you, for the screening eligibility, could you do a, what is it
Chart.
called? A line or a bar graph, where like one axis is the different screening type. So like food insecurity, biometrics, whatever. Yeah. But then this might get complicated and tell me if this is way too much, but where like food insecurity, there's 9 programs or something that screen for food insecurity. Could you, on that bar line, could you make it so there's 9 different colors that are stacked up on top of each other?
I think the easier way of what you're trying to show, Kaylee, is probably just to do like, if you just do a chart and you have the programs down the y-axis, and on the x-axis you have each of the eligibility criteria, and then it's like a dot if it's like yes, if it has it or not.
Yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, that's something I was wondering if it's more useful to have the specific program listed with whatever characteristic the slide is talking about, but rather than just like general percentages and proportions.
I think it'll vary by the question. So like
Yeah.
this one, for example, I think definitely like the kind of the check off if it's valid, like grid. I'm just gonna call it a grid. That would make sense. I think the how many years in operation, like, does that really, like, what are we trying to communicate there? Can you go back to that slide actually?
Yeah.
So
I don't think a pie chart works well for this one.
no, I think if anything, like what would be cool here is to show like the range of programs, and like if the majority of them, what is that, like 5?
Also just such a small sample size. It's
Yeah, I was gonna say that really doesn't, I feel like the only thing is maybe just do like a line being like 1 year to like almost like a timeline, 1 year to 9 years, and then have like the names of the programs like on top of each of those like number of years in operation. Like that's an easy visual, I would say.
I like that idea.
What I would, if I'm looking at this data and like what's interesting to me is that none of these programs are year 1, right? And about half of them are actually kind of in their like teenage years, so to speak, like on program. Actually, well, the like 2-year to 5-year, the majority of programs are happening then. So I guess where I would start to like get curious about this is like, okay, they've had enough stability. Actually, all of these programs have had enough stability to get through year 1. And there are some that have gone on for longer, but also what happened, what was it, 2019 through the pandemic, that was allowed programs to open within this 2 to 5 year range.
Maybe, yeah, I could have like GUSNIP funding went out in 2019 or like major milestones there. And then
I mean, and sorry, Emily, I should say, don't feel like you have to add in those major milestones onto this, because I think that's just an extra level of detail. Like, don't worry about that. But I guess if I were to look at this in a critical mind to say as a funder, let's say, or like what's happening in that timeline statewide or nationally that would allow these programs to start during that age range.
Yeah. So maybe and Chin, this is probably what you were getting at, but rather than having like the number of years, just having a timeline and then mark the year that the program started. Is that what you were thinking, to like encourage people to think more chronologically or more?
Yeah, I think so. I think that would be really neat. And then even if you do, I really like what Kaylee was saying of like, what is the context? Because none of these things operate in a vacuum. And so on that timeline, could you also like put in a few like major events that like the pandemic and like GusNet and other things to be like, this probably had an impact. There's some correlation there, and just like help people remember, because I think where it's easy to have some amnesia around things that are hard.
Yeah. And I'll keep it general, just like major events to at least just like encourage people to think that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I like,
Go ahead.
oh, I like, yeah, how you phrase that, Shin, of the timeline of things and that things don't happen in a vacuum. And I also wonder, like, just to continue to add to that, would it make sense to have the slide about funding next to this question? Or like have those in some sort of order where it's like, you know, did a lot of this funding come from COVID relief dollars, or in order to start these programs? I guess 5 years in wouldn't be, but you know what I mean? Like, is there a trend with funders too? And do we need to think about this? Because one of the major challenges for these programs is to find funding year after year. And so are we looking also at a trend of funding cycle where people are focused on, or funders are focused on food security versus something else?
Yeah.
Sorry, I know this is probably so much, but it's just fascinating to me too.
No,
Yeah,
this is super helpful. I've been really struggling to like think contextually like this, I guess. I mean, I've been just like, I don't know, hyper focused on like the specific questions and trying to just like clean up the data. So this is super helpful to kind of zoom out a little bit and think about the most logical way to organize this data and how to best display it. So no, this is super helpful. I don't know if I have enough funding information to provide that much of a narrative, but
and I think it's okay if you don't. I think, or what I wonder about is, and this is always easier to like say this when like you're not the one in school anymore, because I know like for me when I was in school I had a really hard time being like, oh, I'm supposed to have all these answers, otherwise I'm like somehow failing at this project. Whereas I think in actuality, like building on kind of what we said earlier, is you don't have to have all these answers, but you can tee up some additional questions that should be asked of like what we're collecting and like what's being tracked. And, you know, I'm sure you've heard back from some programs that they've shut. What year did they shut? Why did they shut? Like, and even if that's just like a slide, like on one slide at the very end, or like just like things to consider, or like maybe like between sections too, to be like, you know, these are some of the questions that like we would have loved to have the answers to, but like we don't at the moment. Because I think that'll also really help with the conversation too. And like, again, some of this might not ever make it into like are not going to make it into your 10-minute presentation, but I think these when you do the presentation to the larger Veggie Rx group, like I think people really appreciate like that context and like nuance.
Totally. Yeah, it's challenging for me to think that way because I just like my brain just wants it to be like black and white, easy numbers, easy things to graph, but every program is so different. And yeah, there's different challenges and different contexts for each program. So just need to get comfortable with it being a little messy. And
yeah,
I think it's a good idea to have questions in there and room for people to think a little bit.
And you could add those in as like, I mean, I know this is in Canva, but it does look like there's a note section, but even in the note section, right? Like under this particular slide, you could add the question about like what events historically were happening or in the field of like nutrition incentives during these years that these programs started to arise, either locally or nationally. And yeah, and I think what Shin spot on, right? Like when you're presenting this to the larger working group, I think the working group's going to probably even have more messy questions or like insight to, well, this is our, you know, in our experience, this was going on. And so we were able to sustain this program or whatever it might be, you know,
Mhm.
that'll help lead us to some of those, to more questions and more answers, and that go beyond like, and I think that's also, again, we're going down a little bit of a tangent, but I think what is kind of really cool about this work, Emily, because you're like teeing it up for another student or even just the working group to continue this work on, and that it's it's a puzzle piece to larger, like lengthier lifetime of work, right?
Yeah.
And so give yourself that freedom to make it messy. And that you're just helping us along the way, you know?
And
Yeah.
also understand that it's really hard to do that because I think we are so programmed by the way that the educational system is set up, especially higher ed, of like it needs to be like done and dusted, clean, and like not confusing. And that's not reality, right?
No, it sure isn't. Yeah, everything I've done in school, they like anything you practice with, it's very, very clean, simple data. And this is not, but that's okay. Yeah, this is super helpful. Okay. Would it be helpful to just like go through more of the slides I have and the more of the questions?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Is that actually, yeah, this is a little bit small on my end, so I can't.
Let's see. I can at least get this away. And then maybe,
Oh, that's a little better.
or maybe I could even present it. Would that make it better? Whoa. Is that better?
Yes, and it just says number of FTE. I
Oh,
don't see the graphs.
oh no.
Yeah. Do you have to keep pressing the?
I mean, this is fine too,
Okay. Weird. I can also zoom up on certain.
Yeah. I think if you look at the bottom right corner where there's that like the two arrows going diagonally, that might be your full screen. Yeah.
Well, I think is it
Oh,
doing the same thing?
yeah.
No.
Okay. Never mind.
Weird.
This is fine though.
Okay. Can we like try to zoom in a little bit?
Oh,
Basically what I have. Oh, does that work?
sorry. Sorry. I think I'm doing the thing where I'm just like, oh, we're in crunch time. So let me just blurt out ideas that I have instead of like letting you.
It's totally okay. Feel free to blurt. That works for me. Okay, so this is just number of full-time employees, number of volunteers. Yeah. I don't know. I had both a bar graph and a pie chart because I don't know what is the most useful to look at.
To me, it's almost for me, it would be like a chart with the names of the programs on top, and then down the like vertical axis, it would be FTE to volunteers, because then you can see like the difference of how many are actually FTE compared to like volunteers they use. Like, how is this program like people wise supported? Like that visual feels useful to me for this.
I totally agree.
I also wonder, because this is hard, for some reason, this one particularly is hard for me to like decipher what it's trying to say. But what Shin said of like having the program name, could you put little people icons and maybe like if there's like green people that are the FTE and purple people that are like the volunteers or something,
I
and you
like that.
can like make them like
Like a pyramid stack kind of thing for.
yeah, like you know how they say like 1 in 10 children are left-handed or something, and then it's like it shows 10 children and then one of them is like purple or something and the rest are yellow. I don't know.
Yes, that's such a good idea. Yes, they even have a little people icon chart. So
Oh, there you go. But
Keely,
then
go ahead.
oh no, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, were you thinking also program specific?
Yeah, like so it would be like High Desert Food and Farm Alliance And then let's say they have 1 FTE, so there'd be like 1 little green person, and then maybe they have 10 volunteers, and that would be like 10 little people icons for volunteers. And if it's like 0.5 FTE, maybe, again, if this is too complicated, don't worry, but like, could you just like, could the half of the little icon person be in like gray or something, or like, I don't know how you would do that, but and again, if that's too complicated, maybe don't worry about that. But
I haven't used the little people icon feature, so I'll see what it does with decimals. If it just doesn't have a human
cutting people in half.
Yeah. But I like that idea. Yeah, no, this is so useful to just think about which questions are better visualized program specific and which is better more general.
And you could well, what do you think about this too? If you combine, because that would combine both of these numbers, the FTE and the volunteers, but I also wonder if you combine the data about how many people are served within the program. So maybe you have like the pink people, or I don't know, but like, because I guess my question here would be, is there a correlation between like, does it take at least 1 FTE per 100 people served, or, you know, per 50 families served, or whatever that might look like. And certainly if the programs gave the data per household, like, and I don't know how you question that, but like, let's say it's per household versus per person, you could put a little house icon that's like, you know, 50 houses or something.
Yeah,
Perhaps the screen might get kind of busy, but I'm not sure.
No, that's good though, because I think that is super useful to see what sort of like staffing amount it requires to serve a certain population. I will say though, I phrased the question about population served very poorly, because about like half people responded in household and other people did individuals. But I'm sure if I think about it more, I can kind of parse that out, and I can also just email people and get clarification, because I think that would be really useful.
And it may not be the way that you question or phrase the question. It could also maybe be that people are measuring that in different ways in their programs.
Yeah, that's true.
And if they just do household, they may not collect individual like people serve, but I don't know. Anyways, sorry, we can. That's great.
Okay, this slide will hopefully have, was Shin's idea, to have a chart kind of depicting at least like an example structure of how, like staffing and volunteer wise, how programs are set up. I don't totally know if I have the information to do that, but I think I do, based off like the question that breaks down roles. I just haven't spent enough time with that one to figure out if there's like a general theme, or if there's a good one to use as an example, but I'll know more once I look at it longer.
Cool. And then I think even oh, lost it. Keep going.
Okay, let me know if it comes back.
Could you, with that, like if you do sit with the data a little bit longer and find that there are specific roles like grant writing or something that are absolutely always FTE, like maybe it's just a list that's like FTE roles, and then there's some roles that go between volunteers and staff members, and that's another like just kind of bulleted list.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
I like that too. Cool. I don't remember if people really differentiated between paid and unpaid, but probably.
And if they didn't, like that could be one of those messy slides that you don't really show in your 10-minute presentation, but like, and you might not show immediately in the working group, but you like, if people are like, I remember answering this question or something, like you can bring up this messy slide that's like, well, there's a lot of data here, but there's like no big findings, or like it's kind of all across the board.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. What happened here? Oh, okay. This is another one where I think this one got really messy because there's so many different types of people prescribing. I think this one maybe is useful for
cloud.
specific, but yeah, there's a lot. So I just had like a general other, which is all the other options people.
I was just about to say that too, Shin,
Word
the
cloud.
Wordle cloud thing.
Oh, okay. Let me make note of that.
Because then that would, because it looks like physician is one of the higher ones. So like the word physician would appear a little bit larger than the other words. Is that how that works, Shin?
I don't know, but it can. I was just thinking like, okay, if there's so many different ones and it's not, we don't necessarily see anything like specific that needs to be called out aside from like the types of healthcare providers, like if it's not actually like, we don't know if it's important that, like, it seems like there's a wide array of people who are allowed to like prescribe this and that are being actively used. So maybe it's, yeah, so I think it's just, I was just thinking like word cloud, these are the people that can prescribe. But then maybe this would also be a place where there are some deeper questions about, are there differences in the prescriber and or provider? Like, is there more accessibility if, say, a community health worker is doing this, or versus like having to have a physician sign off? Like, I don't know, like, does that have an impact at all on the way that, on if we were to expand programs, like who should have that ability to prescribe?
Mm-hmm.
And like who should focus on that?
And like to that point too, it looks like there's so many different types of healthcare professionals here. So it's like, maybe that's a really great thing actually, because maybe some person, interacts with a nurse and another person interacts with a community health worker, and like, it doesn't really matter who the prescribing person is as long as they're getting through the program. I'm looking here, Emily, the THW is traditional health worker, and oftentimes community health worker and traditional health worker are used interchangeably, those terms. So you could, if you were doing a Wordle here, I don't know if that would up the number of community health workers. But yeah, traditional health, I think there was a kind of a movement to go back to traditional health workers. And that also includes like peer support specialists and doulas, and like there's a couple of different types of community or traditional health workers under that umbrella.
What is the term that is used as the umbrella? Is it community health worker?
I think it's actually OHA. Am I getting this wrong? Shin, do you know? I should know this. I can get back to you, Emily. I think it's actually traditional health worker, as OHA uses that, and then community health worker is like one, like everybody has to go through CHW training, but then you can get more specialization in like addiction, peer support, and doula and other things. But I'll flag that, Emily, and try and get back to you on that one.
I had no idea what that stood for. I Googled it and I found nothing, so I just kept it in acronym form.
Oh my gosh, Googling acronyms is like the worst. Because I can, it's just so, it's so specific.
And you'll get like an Urban Dictionary definition, which is not helpful. Okay, cool. I think a Wordle is
great. Sorry, one more thing. I think the other piece that's probably important here is at some point with like continuing to have like, what is a Veggie Rx program type of like like those conversations, I think being able to also say, these are the types of healthcare providers who are able to write to prescribe it.
Mhm.
Like, I feel like that would be important for like healthcare providers that fall into these categories, because they probably don't, not every one of them probably knows that
Yeah,
ability. Okay, that was it.
I'm just gonna make a note really quick. Okay. Cool. Okay, next general section is eligibility / participants. I opted not to include the first question because a lot of people interpreted it as being synonymous with screening / eligibility rather than like how do people find out about the program. So
Mhm.
the data didn't seem super meaningful because I could tell there was like different interpretations of that question. So
Okay.
I skipped over it if that's okay. I could also do like a word cloud type of thing, just listing it out for those that did answer it as intended.
Mhm.
But yeah, I don't have anything on here at the moment about recruitment. But if you think
I
it'd be
think
helpful.
that I think it's okay to leave that out. Um, maybe as just a question mark of like, and do we get into this later, but like how many of these sites are screening for food or I guess we already asked that, right? The food insecurity question.
That is this one. So that's what people were interpreting that question as, like, how are people eligible for the program? But the intention of the question was like, how do people find out about the program?
Okay.
But I didn't get a whole lot of responses because I think the way I phrased it, it seemed like I was asking about eligibility criteria.
But
Okay.
that might also be how people are first hearing about it. So
True.
like if a clinic is screening for food insecurity, that's the only way that a patient would find out about the program, if they screen positive and then are offered the intervention, so to speak.
Yeah, maybe that's what people were meaning by that then.
But maybe that's just like a, hey, question, like clarifying question, like how are people finding out about these programs?
Okay. Perfect. Just making a note. Okay. Awesome.
I think this one actually, like of all bar graphs, like this makes sense to me in this, like I think it's great the way it is.
Bar graphs.
Yeah.
The only
Mhm.
thing about this, wait, what is this different than? Oh, there's also a question about like what measures are tracked, which is very similar. But so my only concern with this one, does it make it seem? Oh, we did look at this one already. I forget it. I just had it as a pie chart originally. Does it make it seem like it's like,
Oh, right, like they're
Oh,
only screening for food
yeah,
insecurity.
like mutually exclusive or whatever the word is? Should I try to make it clear that like one program can use multiple of these?
I think we can just default to what we said when we talked about this the first time around,
I
which was
forget.
the graph, or
Like
not
the
the graph, the chart.
Yeah, I think what you said, Shin, right, was list the programs and then which types do they use.
right.
Yeah,
Okay, cool. I
yeah,
do have a note of that. I just forgot already.
that's okay. I've definitely.
I do think though, on like if you were to do that in a previous slide, but this slide to me is like, wow, a huge commonality between many of these programs are food insecurity and diet-related
Mhm.
illness diagnosis. Like I think that is an important visual to see.
I can easily just like have it off to the side with the table, and I can make a
Yeah,
note that it's like programs have multiple of these. I mean, you would
Yeah.
know that if you just like counted it too, because there was only 11 programs and there's like
yeah,
way more than 11 total values here.
yeah. And I think yeah, and especially with what we're trying to communicate on this one, it might be, can you change the x-axis so that it's from highest to lowest? So then you can see like food insecurity, next, then diet related illness diagnosis, and then all the others, like.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, I kind of just listed them randomly, but I think that would be more powerful to have it descending. Awesome. I will do that. Okay, the next slide I have is maximum capacity versus number of people served. And I haven't put the data in here yet because this is where some people answered in household, some people answered in individuals, and I just haven't spent enough time to try to parse that out. But and yeah, and then I can add this to the staffing / volunteer slide to try to communicate the relationship between number of full-time employees / volunteers with people served.
And certainly, Emily, if you run out of time to do that, like, I don't know if you were planning on emailing individual programs to clarify that data or not, but if you were and that becomes too much, I wonder if it would be okay if you just did report it as they reported it. So whether it was household or individual, like, because, and that's something that we can pick up and follow up on the data in the future. And I wonder too, with that slide of the FTE and volunteers, instead of, like, it might get to be too tedious to put, like, I don't know if it's like 200 households to actually put 200 icons of little houses on there, but you could put a house icon and then just put the number 200 on the inside of the house.
Yeah, or like one house per 50 people.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll see if I can figure it out, household versus individuals, but and then I can reach out to people if I need clarification. Worst case, I'll just like do a table or something and just report it exactly how they reported it to me, but I'll try to avoid that if possible.
And I know we have 10 minutes left. I have a hard stop. I don't know where Kaylee's at, but I definitely want to offer, if you shared the presentation with us, and let us know when you've made some updates. Like I'm happy to like add in additional comments and kind of do and provide any feedback you want that way.
That would be awesome. Yeah, I'll try to really, I've been trying to, but this is yeah, there's just a lot of things happening. So I need to just dedicate like some concrete time to do this. But yeah, once I have made these updates, and then this has just been really helpful to think about it differently. So I think even like going through the other slides that we haven't talked about, I think this discussion will clarify like how things should be visualized. So yeah, I'll share it with you. And then if you have time to make comments, that would be awesome.
And I can stay on an extra 15 if we want to power through after Shin jumps off. We could power through whatever is left.
Okay, that's perfect. Okay, next one. Individual or intended recipient. So this is a separate question that's kind of similar, but this is like asking whether the benefits are intended to only feed the patient who is prescribed, or if it's intended to extend to their household. And this is kind of a cool slide because almost everything, or maybe it'd be better to display this with the raw numbers, but almost every program is geared towards the entire household, which is kind of interesting, I think.
Yeah.
I think that works better with the numbers because I was like 90%. What is this saying?
Yeah, it does percentage by default, but it's such a small sample size. I feel like just raw number is more informative.
For sure. I think the other thing that might be powerful for like slides like this is, I don't know, like having a sentence being like 10 out of 11 programs focus on, I don't know, like acknowledge that household food access is, you know, important or whatever, and not just like the individual. like something like that, because then it kind
Yeah.
of is more explicit about like what people are seeing.
Yeah, I like that too. And to put some more summary notes in there and not, I mean, I think there's, how do I phrase this? There's a couple things that come up to me or come into my mind of like, did that one program that's just focusing on the individual patients, like, we don't want to like ostracize them, because it might be a funding issue or it might be like the restrictions on whatever. And like just giving food to one patient versus the household is still better than nothing. But like
Yeah.
giving that recommendation of like, over these other programs, it has been, I don't know, like it's recommended, or I don't know how.
Maybe
Yeah.
maybe it's looking for like, I'm sure there's some kind of like data point. Maybe I wouldn't spend a lot of time looking for it, but I wonder if there's like a general data point or like statistic that we can quote that's like the impact of like household food access on, or like food access on the overall household or something, and then like that can be kind of like contextual content of like why we asked this question.
Okay.
That was kind of where my brain was going before.
Yeah, I like that.
Look for journal. Okay. Sorry, making a note here.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, because I think it's always interesting. Like the more that I think the more that we can incorporate statistics that like connect programs, their impacts, the challenges, and then also like statistics around like food access and like health and like those social determinants of health for like the individual, and then also like current events. Like I think all of those things like oftentimes still end up getting talked about like very separately,
Mhm.
and like but they like all impact the same things, and like the more that we can like stop talking about them in vacuums and like bridge those gaps, I think especially in the position that like you're in, Emily, as like a student and learning about the whole landscape, you get to like, I feel like you get to kind of do that. Whereas I think some of the programs that we work with, like is- sometimes there is still a little bit of that siloing in order to get like work done.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's the whole like idea of public health, is to take more of like a bird's eye view and contextualize why these things are happening.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a question I kind of had, as well as like how much like discussion I should have in this and how much contextualization I should have. I think it's super important, and I don't know, it kind of like explains why this work was being done. So I didn't know if that was like appropriate to have in this, or if I should just focus on the raw data. But
I think context is so important. And I think like the more that we're able to continue, like especially in like more maybe like scientific or more like data driven industries, I don't think that's the right like practice spaces, the more that we can infuse like bio brain, um like descriptive and not just like numbers.
Mhm.
I think
Qualitative.
that's Hmm,
I was just saying qualitative, like
thank
qualitative.
you. Oh my God. I
Do
was
a
just
lot
like, I
of
know that.
that.
Yeah. The more that we can incorporate qualitative data, I think like and back that up with quantitative stuff, I think that's really important.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
all data is like inherently biased, frankly.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, and how do we use that qualitative and summary like description to
Mhm.
color in, so to speak, like the rest of the story of this pie graph,
Yeah.
to say like with healthcare partners, like look, if you're going to expand to transition populations for the 1115 waiver, we really recommend that you look at this on a household level versus the individual patient.
Yeah.
And that this one program that has the individual patient isn't like the innovative program that like, I mean, not to, again, call them out, but to say like, it's really important based on these statistics that like, there's going to be a greater impact and longer term impact of serving the entire household.
Yeah. And so this morning we also had a conversation with like the Health Share of Oregon and just like that intro conversation, and like their whole take on like the 1115 waivers that it's going to be super restrictive. So that, but I think the continued conversation will be there are other dollars that they will have, and like other programs and like other things out, not just the 1115 waivers. So like, how do we make sure that, you know, the Health Share of Oregon and other, they're CCO, right? Or no, they're not CCOs. They're the, anyway,
yeah.
in that positionality, that there are these larger conversations so we can figure out collectively where do certain things have to get funded. And like, it's not a, oh, well, if it's not 1115, then like they can't help at all. So I think the more that we can think about the way that we're presenting certain work as like, it is complex and it is complicated, and decisions are made sometimes that are subpar in certain areas and not necessarily out of like complete neglect or like malice, but rather there are these other like layers to be considered. While yes, like sometimes like we do need to just push harder on the fact that these layers are like really negatively continuously like impacting the same groups of people. And so what that means is like we need to just like deal with that, even if it's really hard, rather than look away and be like, well, we're doing the best we can. But I think it's still like, how can we look at information and share information from the context of like everyone's probably doing the best they can. And so like providing that too.
Do you think it would be valuable to, so at the end of the survey, the participants got asked like what's going well, what challenges they're facing, how they're looking forward. Do you think it'd be valuable to like, I don't know if there are specific quotes within that relate to these more specific metrics? Would it be helpful to have those
Absolutely.
slides?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And I'm assuming probably keep it anonymous for the program, but just like to contextualize it a little bit.
I think that would be really cool. I think it would like humanize some of this data even more.
Blend it all together. Like,
and that makes me think, like Shin, what you were saying, just, I know you have to jump off, but what you were just saying about like, that I feel like, oh gosh, did I just lose it? Oh, like why some of the things are the way they are, is that because of self-imposed limitations? Is that because there was a very intentional reason why they did that? Or was it just like we didn't have enough funding, so this is what we were able to do, or we didn't have like the in-kind capacity or space capacity or farmer capacity or whatever? So like maybe Emily is just like another parting question to the group of like, why are the things the way they are? Like if it wasn't clear in the survey or in the census, like again, the challenges that people face, and to make specific programmatic structural decisions because of those things.
Yeah, I think that's a great one, Kaylee, because I think sometimes like we think until we're presented with the question of like, why is that? Like, why is that really? Sometimes like we don't get a chance to like stop and like think about it again, because some of it might be like historic decisions that are no longer relevant anymore and could be looked at again. And then I think Emily, like that's a thing, maybe like that piece of it isn't necessarily in your 10-minute like those specific questions aren't in your 10-minute presentation, but maybe they are for the larger group. And then that could be teed up for like, these are some of the things that like we're going to want to talk about and discuss and figure out together. So come to the in-person convening.
Yeah. And a huge part of why we're doing the survey is to identify leverage points for future expansion and improvements and so on and so forth. So that's where you identify those leverage points, is like in those little nitty-gritty details and those little quotes. So yeah.
Cool.
Awesome.
I'm gonna drop off, but I think I transferred over hosting abilities to you, Emily.
Okay. I don't know, but
I
hopefully.
thought I saw a little pop-up thing that said Emily's now the host. So
Okay,
I think we're
cool.
good. Thanks, Shen.
So much, Shen. You were super helpful. Oh, she's gone.
Oh, she's gone.
She went real quick.
Which also makes me think of like, it would be great to invite Mary to whatever probably the like working group one, but because she's been working with Betty Azumi and the CSA Partnerships for Health, like I feel like she might have some really great questions and insight too.
1000%.
I know she's really busy, but anyways, I was talking to her a little bit more about OCFSM today, and I think she's really interested in maybe finding a way to get involved. So
yeah.
Anyways, cool. Yeah, but I definitely, if you have some great quotes that pertain to some of the more like data points, I would say stick them in there.
Okay. Yeah, because it feels really important to include, but like it doesn't nicely fit into the numbers. So yeah, maybe even just like having quotes off to the side.
Totally. Yeah, I think that would be great.
Okay, awesome. Do you want me to just like quickly go through some of the other slides I have?
Sure.
Okay. Okay. This is, does benefit amount change depending on the size of the household? So this, yeah, it just says yes, no.
Okay.
And then there's some people who's yes, but switching to no in 2023.
Oh, got it. So it's like, that's a fixed amount versus like changes depending on if there's 10 people in the household or 3 people in the household.
Yeah, I think at the very least I could combine this with the previous slide.
Yeah.
This one.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
And again, that question, this one about does it change? I feel like that's a question of like, well, is that a funding limitation, or is that is there an intentional reason of why? Just as like that's not the neat and clean for your presentation, but like continued questions we have.
Do you think, so these continued questions to pose, do you envision those like explicitly asked on the slide, or like a slide afterwards, or just verbally posed to the group during my longer presentation?
I wonder if we have those like as you're going throughout it and you're posing like these, this is limited information, and like is the reason why because of funding limitations, or is the reason why because there was like on a previous slide, like the historical context in which we are in. Like I think you could pose those throughout as kind of like what's the word for questions that aren't meant to be answered right then?
Rhetorical
questions, or like just like, hey, I mean, not necessarily a rhetorical question, but like within the presentation. And then maybe you have a summary slide at the end that says, here are some future questions to ponder with the group. And like you can go over all of those questions that you asked throughout, and then like be like, these aren't like, we can go through some of these questions and review some of these, but like this might be a longer term discussion around these programs or something. I don't know.
No, that's super helpful. So kind of both like as I'm presenting the data and then at the end sort of summarizing those questions and those.
Yeah. And
Okay.
maybe the throughout is like just having those in the note section of the presentation. So you don't have to list those actually typed out on each of the slides, because maybe not every slide would have questions either. But then, yeah, make a summary slide of all of those at the end.
Okay. That sounds good. Okay, next section is redemption. Oops. So this first one is redemption method. And
okay.
this should, I feel like, also be raw numbers rather than percentages. So yeah. I don't know if this is one that it would be better to have program specific or just general breakdown.
I think this one actually works well as a pie chart.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. That's interesting. That's surprising to me that there's more CSA produce boxes than it's like kind of half and half there, but
I thought there was going to be way more paper voucher.
Yeah.
But based off the responses, a lot of produce.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then I had space for another slide that would break down increments, like the actual.
Oh, like $5 per person or something.
Yeah. And I had a little bit of trouble interpreting that data because like one of them just said 10 and I didn't know if that was $10 or they get like 10 tokens or 10 vouchers or whatever. So yeah, I haven't figured that one out yet, but
I think that would be interesting to see, or even the range of like, you know, $5 to $10. There's a range of $5 to $10 per person in the household, or I think that would be interesting because it's almost like doing a survey of wages to see if you're at market value, you know, like, is your company offering competitive wages?
Yeah.
If there's some way of sussing that out.
And then do you think it would be better to just have like figure out that range and then I could even just like stick it here, like underneath paper vouchers and have the range right there or tokens or whatever it's.
Yeah. Yeah, it almost might be interesting to on one side, on the side that's like the token paper vouchers and debit card, like $5 to $10 or you know whatever it is, but like the range of $10 to $15 per person per week, or maybe it's better to do total value, because that's the other thing, right? So some of these programs will run 6 months, some of them are year round, some of them are, you know, the growing season. Because what I was going to say is like, if you put a range on that side and then on the side where it says CSA produce box, you could put the range of months in operation. So you get a sense of like how long and what the value of the CSA box is.
Okay. Yeah, I think I need to like, because I've been like looking at the questions individually rather than, I don't know. So like, yeah, because
to layer them on top of each other.
Yeah, because I have a question later on that asks like monetary value per pickup versus monetary value for the entire program. But I don't think that data is super meaningful unless it is layered, like you were just saying, because yeah, each program, like there's one program it's a 2-year program, but they only do 6 months out of the year. And I don't know if that's CSAs versus vouchers. So the value would change.
Okay.
I think I should I don't know. I don't know the best way to do that, but yeah, I think it needs to be layered somehow.
And if that gets too complicated, like the timeline plus the value plus the type of redemption, like, don't worry about it too much.
Okay.
Like if it just seems like so complex to try and figure that out, like maybe you just layer one or the other, but not all three on there. Yeah. Like if it's easier to just layer a value, or if it's easier just to layer the timeline of that. And then on a separate slide, you can, the other, layer. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Yeah, timeline might be a little tricky to add in that same sequence, but I think at least like value and method
Yeah.
be nice to have together, at least to kind of clarify how they function. I don't know. I'll have to look at it more and see what makes sense, but
Okay.
I think there's a different way to just display this that would be more useful. Okay, so increment amount, and then this is redemption location. This is another one where some programs have multiple options. So maybe a table is more valuable here and have it program specific, because like some programs you can redeem at a farmer's market or a grocery store. And I don't want this pie chart to make it seem like there's 4 programs you only do it at a farmer's market, so you only do it at a grocery store.
Yeah, I think maybe a chart might work better for that.
Okay, perfect. Oopsies. Use chart here. Okay, and then how do you feel about like the number of unique redemption sites? Not a lot of people answered that question. There's only 4.
What does that mean?
Like how many farmers markets are they able to go to, or is there a limited amount of grocery stores they can redeem this at? And I guess this is another one where I need to connect it with the previous question to figure out if it's even referring to farmers markets or grocery stores to contextualize.
Yeah.
Not super meaningful, isolated like that.
I would say, like, use a chart here for the redemption location. And then let's say there's the column where it's like farmers markets, and this particular site has 5 farmers markets. You could, instead of putting a little dot there, you could put 5. You know what I mean? Or something like that, if that even makes sense. It might not make sense. And you could also say, hey, this question wasn't that meaningful. Let's not include it here.
Okay. Well, I'll look at that more and see if it seems valuable to have, and if it seems valuable to just tack it on to the chart of redemption.
Yeah.
Do you need to hop off? I realize it's 1:14 now.
I was just trying to give myself a little bit of a break from the screen, but I'm feeling okay.
Are you sure?
Let's try and power through a few more of these.
Okay. Okay, this one is transportation offered. 7 programs said yes, 1 said no. And this is one where there's definitely more context in the way they answered it. Because some are like, yes, if they need it, a community health worker will deliver it. Or it's like, yes, by default, it's all delivered.
Okay.
So there's definitely a lot more going on here. It's just, I don't know how to display that.
I wonder, is it possible to suss out like no, and then instead of having 7 as yes, is there like the program is a delivery program versus like this is something as like case by case? Like if somebody is sick and they can't make it there, then we'll make accommodations for them. Is that
so? Just have more sections of the pie chart where it's like yes under these circumstances, or yes by default?
I think yes, having 3 sections, so a no, which is one program, and then in the yes is breaking that between yes, it's always delivered versus yes, we can make special accommodations.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then maybe that is where you are putting a few quotes in there too.
Okay.
Like if there's notes here that say like, we always deliver, or like, or we always offer Uber rides to the CSA pickup. Like, I feel like this question may be answered different ways too, right? Like everybody gets a bus ticket or a bus pass versus like the food is delivered to their house.
Yeah. And there is, yeah, that is definitely one of the things. There's like, yeah, they'll offer transportation to the site versus just have it delivered to their home.
Yeah. So maybe it's no, yes, always, yes, if needed, but maybe it's delivery versus transportation. I don't know if that's sussed out.
Yeah, I'll
in
have to
these
look. I forget exactly, but yeah, that does feel like an important
distinction of like, yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll look at that more. Types of food included in benefits. This everyone basically, yeah, every program includes fresh fruits and vegetables, but there are several programs that have, in addition to that, frozen fruits and vegetables, canned fruits and vegetables, dry staples, or like meat protein. So this is another one where I was like, I don't want it to seem like it's mutually exclusive. So that's why I put a little asterisk and just said in addition to fresh fruits and vegetables.
So if you were to display this in numbers, would it be, so all 11 have fresh fruits and vegetables, but then is it one of the programs also offers meat, and is that the same as the dry staple program? Or is that a different program?
Let's see, where do I have? Whoopsies. Can you still see that?
I can still see the Canva thing.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna go to Excel really quick and look. So there's one program that has both fresh fruits and vegetables, canned fruits and vegetables, plus dry staples. And then there's another program that's fresh and frozen. And then there's another program that's fresh and meat. So there is actually only, oh, well, no, there were still, yeah, there were 11 programs in total who responded. But 8 of them, there's 8 programs that are only fresh fruits and vegetables. There's one that's fresh plus canned plus dry staples. There's one that's fresh plus frozen. And there's one that's fresh plus meat. So
I wonder, okay, a couple different ways maybe you could do this is instead of saying fresh fruit and veg 11, if you said only fresh fruit and veg, and that would be 8 people or 8 programs. And then you had fruit and veg plus meat and dried staples, or whatever the other ones are.
So have like each scenario as its own slice of the pie.
Maybe, yeah. I think so.
I think so too, because otherwise this could be interpreted completely differently than what's actually happening.
Right. And you said there's 3 programs that offer both the fresh and then something else.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, I think if then that would be maybe a little bit clearer, because from this, I'm looking at like, oh, this almost makes me think that it's like 75% are fruits and vegetables, and then these other, like, I don't know, 20% or whatever, that not 20%, whatever, 5% of the pie is like only offering meat or only Yeah, I think if you just did it that way, that would be fine.
Okay, that makes sense to me too. Okay. Frequency of benefit. Most are weekly. There's one that's every 2 weeks, but they're switching to weekly. Didn't know if I should just tack that on to weekly or if I should separate it. I have it separated at the moment, but and then a few that are monthly.
See, that makes me wonder, like, okay, are they making the switch out of convenience? Was it a demand? Was it like funding limitations before and now they have more funding, so now they're able, or is it like volunteer capacity and like they could only really run it every other week, but now they have more volunteers or more staff and so now they can do it week? Like, I almost like I feel like you could just leave it like this and then put some questions in there like, why?
Okay.
Like, why, like, what are the limitations? Like, what's the, why weekly versus monthly? You know, is that staff capacity? Is that funding capacity? Or is it just like the community just wants to come once a month?
Okay. Yeah, I have no idea off the top of my head if people explained that at some point in the survey, but I would imagine I probably a lot of it is too is just like how the CSA functions.
Yeah. And if they don't explain that, I think that's another one of those where it's like just asking the like that's another further examination question that you don't have to answer.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, next one, program duration. Yeah, 10 weeks, 16 weeks. Some people are there was things where sometimes like there was 24 weeks, there's 25 weeks, there's a few 6 months. So I just combined those to 24 to 26 weeks. And then there was 1 year, then there was 2 years, but the 2 years is only 6 months per year. And there's 3 years and there's as long as needed. So I struggled with this one.
That makes me think that people interpret this a little bit differently.
Yeah.
So for the program that said it's 2 years, but it's only 6 months out of the year, I think that's duration of the benefit versus like eligibility duration. So like a patient would be eligible for up to 2 years to participate, but the duration of the actual benefit is 6 months out of the year. So oh, go ahead.
I was just going to ask if you think I should just tack that on as a 6 month instead of 2 years.
Well, and then I see this one that's like, as long as needed. I feel like as long as needed, they probably interpreted this question as their program, like people are eligible to continue to participate in their program indefinitely. But whether they're running it as a year-long program or as a year-round program, or are they running it as a 6-month program?
Yeah.
So in some ways, this slide, I feel like we need to ask the people that said 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, as long as needed. We actually need to ask them the duration of the benefit per year.
Yeah, I agree. There is another question later on asking if clients can re-enroll, and maybe they specified there, but yeah, no, I get the same sense that this is interpreted very differently.
And if I had the information, like I probably, for the program that said 2 years, but it's only 6 months out of the year, I would probably put them in that 24 to 26 week category. Wait, that's 6 months, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I would probably put them in there and then put some sort of summary on the side of this that says something to the effect of, you know, many programs allow participants to re-enroll for up to 2, 3, or as long as needed. But the duration of the benefit during the calendar year is 6 months or is, 10 weeks or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Would it be good then to, I should probably at least have like enrollment, the re-enrollment slide either next to it or.
Oh yeah, I would put those together.
You slide it over here. Yeah, this is that question.
Um,
The not applicable here, like some people said, the funding is running out this fall. There's like a couple programs that they know the program's going to end. So like they can't re-enroll, but it's not because that's part of their program design. It's more a funding restriction. There was several where it was a funding restriction, like their CCO hasn't allowed for that.
Yeah. So in that case, I would also put a little summary note here that says, re-enrollment is dependent on funding the program or something like that. Like, yeah, on dependency on funding and like sustainability of funding, that it's not like if programs had unlimited funding, they would re-enroll. And maybe there's a quote there that you can put in there too that's like, we'd like to, but our funding runs out, so we don't know.
I think that was later on in the survey when I asked about challenges, I think that was almost like everyone's challenge was funding.
Yeah.
A theme that'll continue to pop up.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. I'll think about how to best contextualize this.
But I think if those two sit next to each other, that would help kind of figure out like duration of the benefits versus the re-enrollment, ability to re-enroll.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. Monetary value. Oh yeah, this one I got confused because I think people answered it confusingly to me.
Monetary value per pickup and for entire program. Okay, so this is like for the CSA, like a 1 week CSA box might be $50, but then like the overall value is $500 or something over the season.
But I could see how that would mean something very different for a CSA versus like a voucher or debit card.
And are the answers kind of all over the board?
I think so. I can look. So like for monetary value per pickup, for instance, some of the answers are 10. And I don't know what unit it is, it just says 10. Another one is 27. Another one was blank. Another one was $1 per family member per day. Box size varies depending on family. Another is $20 to $30. Another one is $30 per single household, $60 per 2+ household. Another one is $30 to $50 depending on seasonal abundance. In 2023, otherwise it was $80 per month per enrolled participant. Another one just says no dash family size. So it's like, I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah. Is there a way to like parse out, so the 6 programs that are CSA or produce boxes versus the answers from the people that have either tokens or vouchers or debit cards? Because that might help, like if somebody wrote $10 or they wrote 10, if it's a token, then I would assume that's $10. But again, like that might be like the data is inconclusive and we need to ask more clarifying questions there.
Yeah, no, you're right. Probably if I added, the whole like the Excel spreadsheet is so long, like the names
I bet
on the left side, but there's definitely a way I can just copy over and compare side by side, like which program this is, what the redemption method is, and then I think that'll that'll clarify the monetary value for sure. Cause like maybe 10 is like number of tokens. I don't know, but
yeah. But then you're like, well, are the tokens $1 or are they $5 a piece? Or like,
yeah, this whole experience is making me really realize how important it is to be careful with how you phrase questions.
yes.
That's
But so one way, if you are able to parse that out, and let's say like where the people were like $20 to $30 a box, or like depends on the season, right? But maybe you have one slide that's like giving a range of values for a weekly CSA box. And then another slide or half the slide that's like, $10 to $25 or whatever the range is.
Do you mind repeating that?
So if you were to break the slide in half or just do two different slides to say, or actually we were saying maybe put that next to the slide that has how many programs are CSA versus like a choice or like token voucher debit. So like maybe put on the side where it says CSA or produce box, like put a range of values.
Okay.
Oh, that's where we were like, if you can layer this on top. If you can't, then like it could be a different slide.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Should I have also like the overall monetary value for the entire program on this slide as well?
Oh, I mean, I think it would be impactful to add that all up. Like, do you have a number that's like, we give out $50,000 worth of food? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's a question I ask. Let me see if I can look that up really quick.
Because it might be really impactful if it's like just one giant number of all of those added up. That's like in 2023, it was estimated that, or in 2022, I should say, in 2022, it was estimated that like $1 million was spent on fruits and veggies, and like lump that whole number together. And it could be estimated, right? Like if people are giving kind of ranges or what, like between $75,000 and $80,000 a year, because maybe the redemption rate is like 85% or something, but whatever. Like I would go with the higher number and say estimated this number was devoted to food benefit.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I'll show you kind of how people responded to the question asking what is the monetary benefit of the entire program per participant. So one person said 480. I'm assuming dollars. Another person left it blank. Another person said $1 per person per day, including all family members. Duration of program depends on pilot/funding. Another one.
Okay.
$360 per individual household per year, $720 per 2+ household per year. Another person said $550, which is the cost of a small CSA share. Another one says each patient participates in the program as needed, might be weekly for 2 years or monthly for 6 months. We have not calculated average total monetary benefit. Another one says our grant was for $15,000. Another one said we do not measure this, and another one left it blank.
Okay.
So it's like, oh, I could not have phrased it worse, I don't think.
I wonder if you, and again, I know that there's a lot of things to be done on here. So one option is to, if you're able to send me like, even, I'm just trying to think like, if I could estimate a calculation of like, if people are like, we serve 30 people in this program and they said $1 per day per person per blah, 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 blah. Like if I could do a quick calculation for each program to estimate like, or like the program that was like, we got $15,000. I'm going to assume that $15,000 is for veggie prescription. Like, so have a rough, and again, this is rough estimate of like how much was spent overall on programs.
Yeah. Okay. There's got to be a way on Excel to like easily put two columns side by side. Because that's what's making it difficult is not having that data next to each other. But yeah, that's what would need to happen. I just need to multiply by the number of participants and try to figure out this.
Yeah. Well, and you could like make another tab on Excel and just copy and paste the columns that you want to put them next to each other.
Yeah. I've been using pivot tables, which like takes certain values and then counts them, which is helpful sometimes, but it only works in certain instances. But yeah, that's probably what I have to do is just lots of tabs.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that is definitely a calculation that can happen. It will be a very, very rough estimate, but an estimate nonetheless. How is your head doing? It's 1:38.
How many slides do we have left?
Like,
well, I feel like we jumped backwards because weren't we on like
redemption rate? Okay, redemption. There's a lot more. I just haven't done anything for them yet, but for the ones I have, I just have a couple more.
Let's just do those ones then.
Okay. This is redemption rate. Only 7 people replied, and I kind of had to simplify the data here, but yeah, 5 programs were between 80 and 100%. 2 programs were between 40 and 60% redemption.
So this is also interesting to me because there were 6 CSA programs and 5 like non-CSA programs. Because this to me, the redemption rate makes me think more of like tokens and vouchers and debit cards, where it's like versus like how many people picked up their CSA.
Yeah.
This may be, I don't know if this is, well, it is important to note that like overall there's a really high redemption rate.
What if this is another layer that goes on to this slide, the redemption method, and like,
yes,
it'd be easy to break it down, like 4 CSA boxes, the redemption rate is this, 4 debit cards, this is the redemption rate. So
yeah, that would be great.
Oh, I guess I already made a note of that. Try to layer. Yeah, I guess we already talked about that.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yes. Okay, I'll combine that then. I'm just gonna make a note on this one as well. Combine with redemption. Okay. And then this is basically as far as I got, asking about the educational component, and I didn't know how to do this one very well either. Maybe this is one where it's better to have program specific in a tabular form, because people would say, yes, there's an education component and this is what it is, which feels important.
Go ahead.
So far I just have a list of all the different education ideas, but like some of them, like there will be a program that has multiple of these. So I don't know if that's...
Could you do this as another Wordle or word cloud thing?
Definitely.
And then maybe there's a note at the bottom that says, 8 out of 10 programs offer educational component.
Okay, that makes sense. And then I will have another slide for a social component. I just haven't looked at the data completely yet. And maybe that would work. That could be displayed in a similar way.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. And then there's also another question later on that asks if it's required that participants participate in the educational and social aspects. So that could be tacked onto that slide as well.
Okay, yeah, layering that on.
Cool. I can just like briefly show you what other things I need to look at. We don't have to discuss like how to visualize it probably, but yes, the other questions is funding, which I think, yeah, I don't know. It's the options. That was a multiple choice one where people could say like private grants, CCO, GusNIP, other, I think maybe some other options too, but
yeah, I think the funding could be fine in a pie chart.
okay.
And or a pie chart or a bar graph. In descending order, like the majority of programs get some of their funding from, you know, let's say it's private grants, like, and then, you know, very few are getting their funding from GusNIP or something.
Yeah, I could see that being useful. Okay.
And then, oh, CCOs may just picture the logos or with map and logos.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think the map might be interesting to see like how participation in those different regions, because is Kaiser participating in Multnomah County and Washington County, but they're like, you know, all care is in Jackson County or whatever.
And I might need to clarify with programs because some of them, they listed a CCO and the question asked them to describe their relationship with their CCO as you suggested it to, but a lot of folks just said, they just stated the CCO. So I'm unclear if they actually work with that CCO or if that is just the CCO in their region.
Yeah. That might be inconclusive.
Yeah.
Oh, and then the standardized currency, that one may be, yeah, pie chart with quotes with feedback. Yep. I think that's probably.
Yeah, because almost all of them are like, yes, in this situation, or like, no, because of this. So that's, yeah, that one I think definitely needs a lot of context.
Yeah.
Cool. And then, yeah, and then I have a question about what measures they track throughout the program. So separate from like what eligibility criteria it is, but rather like how they're evaluating the efficacy of the program and what measures they're tracking. To figure that out. And then frequency of those.
I wonder if this could be a table.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking that too.
Because
like specific programs, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. I think so too. Otherwise it'll get wild.
It might get wild.
Okay. Cool. And then I forget exactly how people answered this one, but the program evaluation was, I think, just asking like, how do they evaluate their program? Like whether that's like a pre and post survey, or if it's like just with those tracked measures, so on and so forth. And I can't remember how people really answered that, but that's what it was getting at.
Yeah. Okay.
And then there's another question that asks if they get participant feedback, and if so, how often participants can provide that feedback, which I guess would go along with program evaluation. Maybe this could all be one table.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah. just
So,
all one big table that's like, these are the measures. It's tracked every 6 months or every year or every 2 years. And then like, yeah.
okay. No, that makes sense. I think, because it's all really kind of getting at the same thing, and it's just like kind of breaking down how programs evaluate themselves. So that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the last section is just those more open-ended questions about challenges, barriers, what's working well, other comments and concerns, which I think will just kind of naturally integrate itself into the rest of the presentation, hopefully, through some things.
Yeah, and I think if there are some quotes in there that don't integrate with other slides, to have another slide or two with some more of those, if you feel like, oh gosh, those ones are, good things to highlight here that don't fit into these other categories.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. And then after that, I was just because Marielle Slater at the end of her census report, she kind of included like the raw data. I don't know if that would be helpful to have, but I was just gonna have a table maybe like showing like the summarized really basic information, like that Excel sheet that I have, that's the summarized version, and maybe have a table with everything if people want to like look exactly how people responded. I don't know if that's necessary or not, but
I would just say, I would finish it up to say, if folks are interested in raw data, this is like, we want to be transparent about this project, and that can be made available to you upon request or something. Because
okay.
Yeah, I feel like, or, that's something that we post on the OCFSN website or something where, because I feel like if I were listening to this presentation and participating and I just saw a slide with a bunch of raw data on it, I'd be like, I just kind of glaze over
Oh,
anyways.
for sure. Yeah.
So like, no, yeah.
I think that would make more sense for Marielle's because hers was way more simplified. So that was probably kind of necessary to have that on there, but.
And I think she ended up sending that, like she didn't really, well, she did present it, but like some of that I can't remember exactly how she presented it, but I feel like she highlighted some things and then was like, and here's the data.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And then obviously put credit to yourself, and, and maybe it is credit to the organizations that, like, here's a list of those organizations that participated in the survey or something.
Okay. Yeah. I think maybe I'll do that at the
Or at the
beginning.
beginning. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Maybe like with the methodology or something, or just have a separate slide.
Yeah, I think to give them credit that, because it takes some time to fill this out, and like, yeah, and to recognize their contributions to this.
Yeah, I definitely want to make sure to do that. Okay, cool. I have my work cut out for me, but
I know, I feel like I gave you like 50 hours of work more.
No, that's okay. I needed this so bad because I was like, I don't know. There's definitely like a way to do this that's way more valuable.
I do think that you have a really good start here. And I think what Shin was also articulating was like, it doesn't need to be perfect. And as much as we want this to be like buttoned up and like really beautiful and like, black and white or whatever, it's like, there's a lot of questions that come out of this, as there should be. If I was like, oh, you got this, like, like I'd be like, wait a second.
Totally. Yeah.
So I think you're doing an excellent job. And I think even what you presented is like really valuable to the network. So yeah, I'm sure. And yeah, send Shin and I the updated version whenever you get to that, and we can give you some more feedback. And yeah. And if you need help like paring stuff down too for your school presentation, I wonder if you, when you send it to us, to include that, like, if you need help, like selecting what might be more, well, I feel like you'll have a good idea of that too, though.
Okay. Yeah, I think it'll make more sense as I go further along.
Yeah.
I also had just a couple of really quick questions.
Yeah.
At some point, I can also reach out to the people at Adelante, but I thought it might be easy just to ask you. Since I am trying to parse it out by prescribing site for the map, do you happen to know which Virginia Garcia site locations do the prescribing? Is it just the
Yes.
ones?
It's just Cornelius. There's
Oh,
a clinic in Cornelius.
okay. Just currently. So the Hillsborough one and the Beaverton one are not included in that.
Nope.
Okay, perfect. And then there was a couple more programs that I've since kind of learned about, and I've been trying to reach out to them and I haven't heard back. It's probably too late to include them in the greater survey, but maybe I'll just try to figure out if they exist and then include them in the map.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think in methodology, when you say, you give participants credit, you can also recognize there were a handful of programs that were not included in this. And like maybe your recommendations of like, if the census is conducted again, like to make sure that these programs are followed up with or something.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I think there might be one in Cottage Grove, there might be one in Lapine.
Okay.
Just need to reach out to them and figure that out. Or I have it from them.
But I would say it's probably, unless you want to redo all of this work that you just did, like I would say don't stress about it.
Okay. Yeah. At this point, I would love to just get them on the map if possible, but I just don't have time to edit.
No,
But
it's a lot. Yeah.
cool. Well, thank you so much, Kaylee. This has been extraordinarily helpful.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Good.
it's a little overwhelming, but that's okay.
Yeah. And if you do get to a point where you're just like, there's no way, like, hopefully we've given you a couple of options too, to just like simplify too.
Totally. And worst case, I turn in something more simplified for my deliverables that I need to turn in very, very soon for my program. And then I can like go a little bit deeper for Veggie Rx for that larger presentation. Even if it doesn't get in for my internship, I can at least do it eventually. But hopefully I can get it all nice.
Yes, I don't want you to have like extra things lingering too, because that's always like stressful as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'll keep you updated. I will make these updates soon. And then, I'll see you soon, I'm sure.
Sounds good. Thanks, Emily.
Thank you, Kaylee. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.